So I think we'll go ahead and get started. And it shows that we are recording, which is great. And we'll be doing introductions in just a minute. And during the course of the first session, everybody's actually going to do 3 introductions. So I'll give you information on how we'll do that in just a minute. So besides the content that we're learning, so increasing knowledge about grant writing and how you do it, we've designed the class to actually give you some practice at grant writing. So I've suggested that you all come in with a project in mind that you'd actually like to have your organization or agency do. And so I'm going to be giving you homework as part of each session, and you're going to go home with that project in mind and take a stab at it. So at the end of this session, I'm going to ask you to do some project planning activities with your project in mind. So we're going to hopefully increase your actually skills at doing this. We're also going to talk a lot about bringing your organization along with you, the grant writer, and how you get the rest of your organization to participate and care about the projects that you're planning. And then the last goal for the class is to get those of us that are working together on this talking to each other and sharing resources so that the grant writers in Siskiyou County develop a network and you feel like you're supported in your area. Now, one of the fun things that we'll be doing in the webinar is we're going to invite guests in. So today, Levi Williams from the Ford Family Foundation, he's a program officer there. He's going to arrive at 4. We'll take a little break and maybe answer some questions at that time. And then he'll do a presentation this afternoon about the Ford Family Foundation, what their funding priorities are, and answer some questions about how they look at grants and the way that they review and award monies. So he'll be joining us today. We have a visitor from, we're going to have visitors on 2 of the other days, and we'll introduce those when they arrive. So now we're at the part where I'd like everybody to get to know each other. I think we'll start at the top of my screen, and I'll call out names, and if you will introduce yourself by saying your name, what community you're from, the organization that you're associated with, and then what level of grant writing experience do you have. Now, for right now, don't tell us any more details about your organization. We'll get to those in the second and third introduction. So Marie, I see you're at the top of my list. Would you unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Marie Caldwell. I am the director at Siskiyou Works, which is, oh, you said no details. I live in Wairika, but I work all over Siskiyou County, so it's quite a large community.
Great. Thanks, Marie. And what about your level of grant writing? How much have you done?
I would say significant. Probably over about $8 million.
Terrific. Sure. And for the networking component, it's really good for people to recognize those of you that do have significant experience, because it'd be great to set up a relationship with some of the folks that don't have as much for after the class is over. Okay, Jean, welcome.
Okay, there I am. Hi, my name's Jean Trevison, and I'm with the Siskiyou Community Resource Collaborative, and I work as the executive assistant. and my level of grant writing is very, very limited. So I would almost want to say none, just from what I'm learning on the job.
Great. Well, that will change soon, I'm sure. Okay, Arthur.
Hi, my name is Arthur Boyd. I live in Mount Shasta, but I work for the city of Wairika. Before that, I was working for the county of Siskiyou as the recycling grant coordinator for about 5.5 years. And a large portion of my duties was writing grants and keeping track of our expenditures.
Terrific. Thanks, Arthur. Ernie. And Ernie, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Sorry. Ernie Wasson. I live in Dunsmuir, and I'm board president at Siskiyou Arts Museum, which is in Dunsmuir, and I also am involved with the Dunsmuir Botanic Garden. And I would say my grant writing stuff is dormant. I used to do grant writing when I worked at a community college, but I haven't done any in a while. I've done a few for the art museum, but nothing in the last 2 years.
Great, thank you. Lydia.
So my name's Lydia Avery. I live in Yachats, work in Florence, and I'm part of Leave and No Trace, which is based in Coos Bay. And I've had some grant writing experience. I've written 3.
Great, thank you. And Jean, I'm going to go back to you because I see that Michelle O'Gorman is also with you. So Michelle, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Michelle O'Gorman, and I'm with the Siskiyou Community Resource Collaborative. I live in Wairika, but I do work county-wide. I also wear another hat as I'm the treasurer of Beacon of Hope Gospel Rescue Mission. We're building a homeless shelter here in Wairika. And my level of grant writing experience is significant. I would say in 20 years, I've probably received over $12 million.
Great, fabulous. Thank you. George.
George Jennings. I live in Wairika. My organization's area is 5 counties and 2 states. I'd say medium. Medium experience.
All right, and somebody's name is iPhone.
Oh, I'll bet it's me.
Yes, it is. Welcome.
Okay. Yeah, I just barely got on, figured it out. I have 0 experience. That should be the first thing. But my name is Candace Browning, and I'm hoping to learn information for our Sumner Cemetery. I live in Coos Bay, Oregon, so we need to figure it out.
Great.
So
welcome.
Thank you.
Let's see. Justina? Can't hear you, Justina. Oh. And we still can't hear you. I'm going to go to Abby and then we'll come right back to you, Justina.
Justina said she had an issue with her mic, so it might take a minute. My name is Abby Yeager and I'm from Happy Camp. I am the executive director of Happy Camp Community Action, and my level of grant writing experience is moderate.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Justina, are you able to talk yet?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I fixed it. My name is Justina Harrison. I live in Happy Camp. I am the MHSA program coordinator for Happy Camp Community Center, which is under
Justina, lean into your mic. I can barely hear you.
Okay. Let's see if I can make this work. My name is Justina Harrison. I live in Happy Camp. I work as the MHSA program coordinator. for the Happy Camp Community Center, which is under the Happy Camp Community Action. Very limited level of grant.
Okay, and what does MSH stand for?
MSH, MHSA is the Mental Health Services Act.
Thank you. Great. Amy?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I was just finishing up 2 classes at once. My name is Amy Evangelista. I'm from the Hornbrook Community Association in Hornbrook, California, in North Siskiyou. And I think I have minimal plus grant writing experience.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Forrest? Forrest, I see that you're unmuted, but I can't hear you.
Is that better?
That's better.
There we go. Sorry about that. I am the Director of Development for Shasta Cascade Health Centers. I live in McLeod. I also work with the McLeod Community Resource Network. And my level of experience is I'm fairly new. I started my position about 6 months ago. But I've been kind of thrown in the deep end. So I've been working on a lot of federal grants, but not a lot of experience yet with smaller localized grants.
And are you working with somebody on those grants?
I am not.
Okay.
So like I said, into the deep end, I'm getting a hang of the bureaucratic aspects of federal grants, but only a little bit of experience on smaller grants.
Okay, great. Now, the way I've designed the series, I really do want you to ask questions while we're going along, and I will ask my own questions, and I would love to have you share your experiences at different times throughout the program. It'll be my job to make sure we're done in the 90 minutes that I have, so that we can take a break at 4 before Levi comes on. So here we go. And I'm gonna stop sharing again because my PowerPoint. Okay, great. Wants to stop, and now I'll share again. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is share this cartoon picture with you. And I'm going to ask somebody to unmute and tell me what the cartoon means. When you see this diagram, what would you describe as going on here?
The majority of the work is definitely in the planning.
Okay, yes. So if you agree with that the grant writing work, in fact, is sort of the proverbial tip of the iceberg, then understanding what the project planning work is and managing that process of the planning is probably the most important part of grant writing. Now, that's not to say that there isn't finesse involved in writing, but the writing work is not actually the most difficult part. It's the project planning part that is the most often done poorly. So what does that look like? And how can we start creating planning processes that we can feel really good about? So the first thing we want to do is take the cartoon and make it a little bit more complicated. So what you'll notice is in our diagram now, we're starting at the bottom with a project idea. We've got this great idea that we think is aligned with our mission. And so the first step is project pre-planning work. And that pre-planning work involves a lot of things. We'll talk about those in just a minute. But this line here between the pre-planning and planning work is really important, because that's when our organization decides, is this go or no go? We've done some pre-planning. It's given us enough information to decide we really want to go after this. We think it's valid. We think it's a good fit. We think we can do it. Once that decision is made, then we go into the planning work and determine what is actually going to happen, and what the strategy is for finding the resources to do that. And then we think about writing grants. Now, for a lot of people, this way of looking at the pathway to getting to a grant is kind of turned on its head, because some of us start by seeing a grant opportunity with a deadline, and then we start planning a project. Well, that's honestly sometimes even the way that I will do it. But what happens when you do that is that you end up always deadline driven and always rushing to get the planning work done, or dismissing the planning work because you don't have enough time to do it. But if you think about the grant development pyramid in this way, then there's never a reason to hurry, because there are no deadlines. You plan out your project. When it's thoughtfully planned and approved by the organization, that's when you start looking for the funding resources. And so you can have 10 projects in development, all in different areas, and you don't need to worry about the stress of the funding resources until you're well into the planning work. Okay, so let's put some actual activities on this development pyramid. So down at the bottom, we've got our idea, and then that pre-planning work is going to include the following things. The first thing we're going to do is see what the community thinks about our idea. Do they think that it's needed? Will they support the effort? In our background, we're thinking eventually, after the grant project is over, if we're going to keep doing this, the community's going to have to assume the financial responsibility. So do they really want it? And how are they showing that support? How have I gathered evidence that this is something the community needs? The next box is internal support. Do my staff know about what I'm planning? Have they helped participate in the planning? And are they as excited about the project as I am? Now, there's nothing worse than getting a grant that you thought was terrific, only to have it fall like a lump of coal on the folks that are actually going to have to do the project. Nobody likes those surprises, and they're less forgiving the more often you do that. So in that pre-planning stage, again, I'm thinking, how do I solicit, how do I ask for the people that are going to be doing the work, how they think it should be designed, what level of participation they want to have, are they excited about it? Do they believe in this project? Permission to proceed means that before we leave the pre-planning session, we have to have a way of gathering a decision about whether to move forward. Initial research and feasibility are kind of the elements of how we think this will work. It might not be our final version, but just thoughts. And then the last one in the pre-planning work is interagency cooperation. Now, why is that important? Will somebody unmute and talk about and tell me about the importance of interagency cooperation? Lydia.
Without interagency cooperation, you don't get the support you need to make sure that you can get through the planning and the writing and have it all work out after you even get the grant.
So yes, I like that answer. Another way of looking at it is if you don't have interagency cooperation, if you are writing about this project and your organization is the only one who's trying to solve that problem, then you're describing a silo, right? So the fact that you haven't communicated to others in your area that care about this interest shows that you don't have a collaborative culture there. And while sometimes we can feel like, well, we don't want to tell anybody about it because they might go after the same grant. There's that feeling of competition for resources. In fact, the more that we buy into this interagency cooperation, the bigger the whole pie of funding resources becomes, right? Because in fact, I always say, people think of the funding as being what's limiting their project work, but in reality, it's a thoughtful, well-planned project that is limiting your project work. So if you can focus on these planning elements and doing them thoroughly, you're going to set yourself up for a successful grant program. Okay? Now, we're going to introduce a permission to proceed document later in the session. And here's a hint, that's going to be your homework. And let's say that we completed that homework and we got permission to move forward with our project. So then we move up into the planning work. And now the planning work includes the actual operational plan of how is this going to look, who's going to do the work, how much time is it going to take, what other resources are they going to need. It involves the fiscal strategy of how are we going to pay for this. And this is really the first time we're looking at what grant sources are out there that are available that are a good fit. This might be when we talk to the funders and see if they agree with the alignment of this project to their mission, right? So it's in this planning work that's maybe the first time we're actually looking at the grant questions that are going to be asked for this particular project. Then when that work is done, we're going to focus on the writing and the funder contacts that we need to get the grant submitted. So that's the grant development pyramid. Now, let me ask you this. Who's doing all this work in your organization?
It's all me.
Okay.
That's it. I'm one band.
And how does that make you feel?
Overwhelmed.
Okay. And I bet if I looked out at you, I'd see a bunch of nodding faces. This is a lot of work to do this well, right? And when are we going to fit this in with all of the other things that we're doing? Or we're a volunteer here. So how do we make this happen? Well, if as a grant writer, you choose to do all of this work by yourself, great. But there's also nobody said that you can't ask for help. And in fact, asking for help and getting other people to participate in these processes is a way of elevating your grant program higher in importance in the organization. Getting board members involved in these planning processes means that they're actually going to care about the projects more and care about whether you get it. And when you get the funds and they've participated in that planning work, then they're going to be really excited to get started right away because they've been involved in that planning process. So as a grant writer, now we're actually starting to manipulate our organizations. We're advocating for people caring about the grant writing portion. We're letting them know what's involved and helping them see how they can participate. So what I've done here is I've actually taken each of the categories from that grant development pyramid, and now I'm assigning people to help. And when you look at this matrix, what stands out to you? Somebody else unmute and tell me what do you see in this matrix?
A lot more than one person.
Yeah, and what's the grant writer doing, Abby?
The one part, the couple parts of writing and submitting.
Yeah. So this grant writer, especially if you're contracting with a grant writer, they're a really good writer, but are they doing the project planning work? No. You're really asking the board. This is maybe a small organization, but they've got a program manager and an executive director, and to the degree that we can pull them in and have them help us plan this, that it's buy-in for we're doing it their way. We're not telling them how to do their work, and they're gonna own the responsibility for doing the project and doing it well when it gets funded. So as the grant writer, we may be doing not very many tasks with the specific grant, but we're creating this culture where other people are involved in the planning process. We're sharing that responsibility, even though we might be able to do it quicker and with more experience than those other folks. Over time, them feeling like they're part of a team will actually get them really excited about the work that we're planning. And that's really important. Okay, so let's go back to our cartoon and think about the different layers. How long is this work going to take? If we're going to manage a project, how long does the full development of a project take?
It varies depending on the kinds of projects.
Kinds of projects, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But at a minimum, say a smaller community project, with the idea already in hand, I'm going to give at least 2 weeks. Say at a minimum, I need 2 weeks to pre-plan, 2 weeks for project planning, and then 2 weeks to get the questions answered and reviewed and approved for the application. Now there's project pre-planning. If you wanted to, you could spend 6 months doing it for larger projects, but then you're still going to need the 2 weeks to, after it's approved, to get it ready and set. Here's our final work plan, and then another couple of weeks to work on the grant. So now we're starting to organize the management of the process for the grant. And that's the grant writer's job too. So this is what happens when that work goes astray, or when a friend sends us a grant opportunity with a deadline that's happening in a week. Now, what's the problem here? What's different about this cartoon?
There's not much time for the project planning.
No. And so because we don't have enough time, we're really cheating ourselves on the project planning element. And what that means is we're going to start writing before the project is set. And to somebody who's going to have to read our proposal, they're going to find us wandering all around on what we're actually doing because we didn't set the scope of work before we started to try and answer their questions. And as you can imagine from the way I'm saying it, that's really obvious to the person trying to review grants. And in fact, it was a favorite comment of one of the reviewers for a foundation that I knew well. She would say, yeah, the project looks like it was thrown together at the last minute, right? So for those of us that are doing that, because there's another deadline and it's coming right up and we want to make sure that we hit it, you're better off applying for fewer grants and waiting until your project is ready. Grants show up all during the year for all sorts of things. So again, the rate limiting step isn't the funding resources, it's the thoughtful, well planned out projects that deserve funding. Once they're there, you will be successful at finding the funding resources. Okay, let's look at this. I'm just trying to drive this point home. So our internal planning work is a really important goal of a grant writer. We have two options. We can have the external processes, the funders, dictate our planning process, or we can create an internally driven process that we set up and that we use for each of our projects that are going to allow us to set the pace for when and how the project is developed. And this second option, just like the hasty projects are obvious to reviewers, the thoughtful process that includes board approval or staff approval at several levels is also really obvious to the reviewers. So if we can set these very deliberate internal processes, we're going to feel good about our work, our agency is going to feel good about our work, and the funders are going to feel good about our work. Okay, so setting that internal process is going to require some scheduling. And if here is our project idea on the left, the blue ribbon on the right isn't actually getting the grant award, it's getting the grant submitted and in a way that you feel good about it, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is look at when the grant is due. I'm going to schedule that I need to start writing 2 weeks before that. I need to have my permission to proceed 2 weeks before that. And so at a minimum, I've got to give myself 6 weeks before a deadline to get started on the grant. Now, those of you that have written a lot of grants say, yeah, but we don't know about the grant usually until a month before it's due, right? Yes, and most grants that have deadlines have annual deadlines. So you actually know that the deadline is always going to be at the end of October. So there's no reason that you can't start planning that a couple of months in advance. Or you can plan several projects at one time, have a planning season, and then a grant seeking season. So there are all sorts of options of how you do it. The goal is to remove the deadlines so that you're not working in stress mode, because I don't do well with stress at all. So I will work really hard to manage my projects to avoid stress. Okay, so here's the little quote: an idea without a plan is just a wish, right? So we're going to lean into that planning work. So let's learn more about planning work. So here's another cartoon, and there's some options for how you could use your time and what's more important. So I'm going to ask, here are some choices. You could have a good idea with good planning, a fair idea with good planning, a good idea with fair planning, and a fair idea with fair planning. Yes? So it's pretty easy to get that the good idea with good planning is going to be a winner, right? That's in the money. And the fair idea with fair planning is not going to be our top pick. But my question to you is, which one is better? The green fair idea with good planning, or the blue good idea with fair planning? Who'd like to offer an answer and an explanation?
I think that a fair idea with good planning shows more professionalism and would be more acceptable to the funders than a good idea with fair planning. It sounds like somebody didn't know what was being done well.
Okay, I like that answer. Does anybody have another answer?
I would agree with that answer. I would say that good planning, in addition to showing professionalism, it shows that they've really thought it through. The idea itself can be improved over time, but they've really thought through all the different angles on their project.
Okay, I like that answer. Is there another answer out there?
The only thing I would say is that sometimes a good idea can be really interesting, even if the planning isn't done as well. And that can entice people to want to give to a really good idea. Even
Abby, you're absolutely right. And so is Lydia, and so is Arthur. So as grant writers, what we have to understand is it depends on who you're asking the money from and what they place a value on, right? So there are foundations who really place a value on a good idea and just aren't as concerned with the planning. They want to promote the work that you're doing, and they're really after the good idea. There are other foundations who may have a range of programs they fund. The idea doesn't have to be particularly innovative. They just want to make sure that you have the capacity to do it, right? So it was a little bit of a trick question because there isn't a right or wrong. There's a, do you know your funders and do you know what they care about? And so if we're working to plan a project to a funder who really cares about the planning, we're going to do it differently than a funder who is about an innovative, a really cool idea, right? Okay, so if we now know, we need to know our funders to see what level of planning they're going to require, because, you know, as a grant writer, any work that you do beyond the level to get funded is kind of excess. And those of us that are perfectionists, we kind of need a red line to know this is as good as it has to be to get funded, because to get to 100% of time, you're spending your own resources that could be used on another project. So what are they interested in and what do they want? Now, let's think of another way of looking at a good idea. And so now we're going to move into talking about mission. I'm drawing a circle in the middle of this slide, and everything that fits inside this circle is what your organization hopes to accomplish, right? Why is your organization there? What problem is it trying to solve? And I'd like to give you just a minute to jot down some thoughts. I don't need to hear your verbatim mission, but I want, as a second introduction, for you to answer the question, what is your organization hoping to accomplish? why are you there, or what problem are you trying to solve? And Jean, I'm just warning you, I'm going to ask you to go first.
I'll give this a shot. Resources to families, which could include trainings, food, housing, or help with housing, and other access to resources.
Okay. And is your target audience, are they general families? Are they low income families?
All families.
All families. Okay, thank you. I see Homebrook Communications. Welcome. And would you like to, you're new joining us. Would you share who you are and where you're from as well?
I'm Amy Evangelista. I was on the phone before.
Oh, right.
Doing a different class from the Hornbrook Community Association, Hornbrook, California. And we are there to improve and develop the community of Hornbrook.
Okay. And for everybody living in Hornbrook?
Yes.
How about for the tourists that are visiting?
We don't have any tourists. We'll work on that next.
Okay. Great. George.
I guess in our area, our organization is to help add capacity and improve the lifestyle and the economy in the natural resource-based communities that the area that we cover.
Great. Okay. Is it Carmen?
Say again?
Thank you, George.
Okay.
Carmen?
What is this a fake?
I'm sorry. iPhone. Was your name Carmen?
Candace.
Candace. Candace. What's your organization again, and what are you trying to accomplish?
I'm on the cemetery board. We have a pioneer cemetery out here in Sumner, and it's really ran down, and we had some new land donated, and we'd like to get money to have the plots done for us and figure out some way to maintain it. So
Okay.
I mean, I'm really in the new stages of this with no experience. So I'm I'm most excited for this.
Great. And your mission then is to improve and maintain the Sumner Cemetery.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Justina.
I'm gonna try to. Can you hear me?
Lean in. You're real soft.
Even my microphone. Okay, so I'm with the Habitat Community Center, and our mission is to promote and help them, not word for word, but promote and help the stability and health of our families and our communities, including economic development.
Great. Great. And Abby.
So yes, I also work for Happy Camp Community Action, and our mission is to promote the health and stability of our community's residents. We engage in activities that benefit our children and our families and our economy. And I think that's one thing that our hope is to help our community with transformative economic development.
Nice. Great, thank you. Forrest?
Yeah, so my organization again is Shasta Cascade Health Centers. We have clinics in McLeod, Mount Shasta, and Dunsmuir. And as a federally qualified health center, our mission is to provide first-class care for everybody in our community, regardless of their ability to pay.
Okay, great. Did I miss anybody?
Ernie here.
Yes, Ernie.
Siskiyou Arts Museum, it's to bring the arts to Dunsmuir. Both mostly our setup is more visual arts, but we've had music events and small plays. And I'd say our main is to bring the arts also to attract visitors to Dunsmuir for the local economy. And then the third important thing is to support the local art community by selling their goods and letting them survive.
Great, great. Marble Mountain Farm, welcome.
Yeah, hi. Sorry I'm late.
Well, we're happy to have you. Besides describing your mission, can you say who you are and what community you're from?
Yeah, my name is Hollis, and Marble Mountain Farm is my business that I run with my husband and our 2 kids, and we're in Happy Camp. Our mission is basically to provide really high quality food to everybody. And we're really interested in food security and, you know, local sustainability and all that. So I've been applying for grants for all that stuff, and yes, this could really help.
Great. Arthur.
I was afraid you were going to call on me. So I work for the city of Wairika, and as a whole, our mission is to make sure that we take care of our residents and make sure that the city is structurally sound and it's a safe, healthy, enjoyable place to live and work.
Great. You know, when you say that, Arthur, it's really easy to have that resonate because of the simple terms that you use to describe it. Simple and straightforward. You should go back and now see what the actual organization's mission is and if it's that simple to interpret. Okay, so we each have a mission. Now think of that circle again, and here it is. It's this yellow circle. What does your organization hope to accomplish? Well, there are a lot of ways that you could approach your work, and there's probably more work than you can do to think of accomplishing it in the near future. So what we need to do is filter all the things that we could do to make some smart choices about what we should be doing first or next, or to prioritize work. So if we take the yellow circle and we add to it a blue circle of what you're capable of doing as an organization right now, and then an orange circle of what's actually needed and what's feasible for you to do in a certain amount of time, then what you can do is look at the intersection of all 3 of those, and we call that the smart work to be done. So in this instance, look at all of the things that you're trying to accomplish as an organization. How much of it have we pared down to? In this case, it looks like about 1/6 of all the things that we could be doing, we've decided are what is the work for us to tackle right now, based on our capacity in blue and what's actually needed. So the blue and the orange circles taken together are actually what comes out of a strategic plan, right? What can you do? What does the community need? Or how is the external environment changing? So that's why the strategic planning is so important, or strategic thinking, if you don't have enough time to do a full strategic plan, because it helps you set the direction for what work is immediately ahead of you. That's the work that you're going to be seeking grants for. And so communicating with the funders and saying, well, how did you come to the idea that this is the most important work to be doing now, is a real key of helping them see that you have direction for where you're going. Okay, so we have a mission, we have a strategic plan, or we put some strategic thought into what's next. And now what we have to think about is, we're not the only ones with missions. Just like us, funders also have missions that they're trying to accomplish, right? So if we know our mission, and we're hoping to create a grant contract with the funder, then the next thing we need to do is go out and find out what the funder's mission is. What are they trying to accomplish, right? And beyond that, what kind of strategic planning has Travel Oregon, or whatever funder you're looking for, been doing recently? And what are they setting as their priorities? Because not only do you want your mission to overlap with their full mission, but if their priorities are somewhere over here, then you know that that's not going to be a good fit, and you're wasting your time preparing proposals for them, right? So a good idea, when I ask again, what's a good idea? In your mind, it's something that's going to help you accomplish your mission. To the funders, a good idea is something that falls within their mission. So if your good idea is out here and there's not an overlap with the funder, again, you're really wasting your time asking that organization for funding resources. So just like whether the planning or the idea was more important, we have to use the lens of the funder in thinking about, what are they going to think is a good idea? Does it help them accomplish their mission? So here's another cartoon where we have one funder who has overlap with our idea. We have another funder where there's absolutely no overlap. So what happens? Do we go to the Humane Society? Well, all the time, because there's money out there and we think we may have a chance of getting it, what we see is what we call is mission creep, where we plan a new project that's going to extend over into what the Humane Society is doing, so that we can go ahead and apply for that grant too. Happens all the time. Now, we're not staying true to our mission, right? And usually grant writers don't have the power to actually change our mission. Organizations can change mission, but we take it on ourselves to think that we can extend our mission in all sorts of directions. And unfortunately, what that does is, if we're off chasing dogs and cats, so to speak, with the Humane Society, it's really going to take away our capacity to focus on the work that was in our original mission, right? So that's, I think, a nice visual to help remind us of what happens when we move off of our path to try and secure funding that's out there, but that might not be a good mission fit. Any questions about that?
Well, it seems that you know, you see a grant come up and it looks attractive, but then you're chasing, what is it, the tail or the head that's chasing whatever? And if you end up with a grant that's not really your mission, then you're suddenly sidetracked and your energy and your physical resources are off onto this new thing, which can be pretty dangerous in a lot of ways, or just frustrating.
Very dangerous. And yet, you know, the new projects tend to get more attention, more resources are pushed towards them. And so you can really kind of damage your existing programs and work by heading off in those new directions. So, okay, now let's switch gears. I'm getting us ready for our third introduction, and that is, what are the different types of grant projects? How do you describe them? Some people say there are really only two types of projects: an operating project and a regular project. So what's the difference between those two? Somebody have a good way of describing what's the difference between an operating project or a program type project?
Operating is usually like less restricted funds.
You can spend it on whatever you want if you get an operating grant, right?
Project is more a specific set of deliverables and a specific goal where you're more tied to achieving those in order to be eligible for the funding.
Okay, I like that. Now let's go back to our mission statement diagram. Here's another way of thinking about operating versus program. Any work that you're doing that is directly accomplishing your mission, anything that's inside the circle, is programming. Any work that you do that's outside of the circle, it's not directly contributing to you accomplishing your mission, that's operating. It's making sure your organization keeps existing so that you can concentrate on the programs. So the programs go inside the circle, the operating goes outside. The operating are the administrative supports that don't directly help you accomplish your mission, okay? That's an easy way for me to remember it. Now, the other two types of categories are capacity building and capital. And a capacity building project can be either an operating or a project, and so can a capital. A capital project can be either operating or programming, contributing to the mission or not. Capacity building means that you're learning something new, trying something different, or replicating something that you're doing and doing it in a different location. That's professional development. It's bringing on your first development director. So you're adding something new. And then capital projects are tangible things that you're going to build, right? Buildings, bathrooms, new facilities. The difference between capital and equipment usually is a dollar amount. So I like to think of capital projects as over $10,000, and anything under that's not bolted onto a building is classified as equipment. All right. So given those four terms, and I'm going to go back to them so you can look at them while we do our last introductions, I want to ask each of you in just a sentence, what kind of project you're hoping to fund. Is it an operating project or a program? Is it capacity building or is it a capital project? And Arthur, since you went last time, we'll start with you.
You're killing me today. I don't know. I'm still thinking about that one.
Okay, let's take your pool project. Is that an operating or a program or project? Is it helping you, directly helping you accomplish your mission?
I would say yes.
Yeah, so that makes it a project or program, not operating. And is it capacity building? Is it something new that you've never done before?
That I haven't, or that the city hasn't?
That the city hasn't.
The city has done it before.
Okay. But you're going to build it in a new location, right?
Correct. Correct.
And that's going to make this low-income neighborhood feel like it's got new vitality. And is it a capital project? Yeah, you're building something you can touch. It's a building project. So it's a program or project, it's capacity building, and it's capital. That's the way that I think about it. Now, learning to use these terms is important because the funders are going to tell you, we love capacity building projects, or we don't fund capital projects, or we'll only give you operating of up to 10% for your project. So you're going to have to know these. Ernie, you want to describe your project?
Our project would be to buy the building that we're in, which would be an operating project, and it'd be a capital project.
Okay. Now the building you're in, are you doing performances in it?
Yes.
So that performance part is programming, right?
Right.
Are you going to have administrative offices in it?
Yeah, we already do. Yeah.
Okay, so it's both operating for those administrative offices and programming, because that's where you're going to accomplish your mission.
Okay.
Marble Mountain Farm, what are you looking for?
Okay, so there's lots of different things, honestly. I have an idea of starting a nonprofit. So I'm like way at the very beginning.
Okay.
So that would start with probably capital.
Well,
yeah, I mean, that would probably start with capital.
Starting a nonprofit wouldn't be capital, even though you need capital. But capital is it tangible? Can you touch this thing that you're going to create? So starting a new nonprofit would be a capacity building project, right? It would be a learning thing that would allow you to better accomplish your mission. And it wouldn't be directly contributing to the mission, so it would be operating. It would be a operating and capacity building project. Great.
Okay.
Abby, what's one project that you're working on?
It's hard to go back. You know, when we applied, when we decided to register for this class, it was pre the Slater fire. So, you know, full disclosure, what we were planning to do back then may not be feasible now, but our original intent was to look at a project to create a community garden. So
great.
Yes. Not that we don't want to create one.
Right.
It's just I'm not sure that this is the moment to do that. So for now, that would probably be a project because it would contribute to our mission. And I think it would be capacity building for us. And it's kind of tangible. A community garden has things that it produces. So I would say it's capital as well.
Great. And I'm really sorry about the fires being so close and right in Happy Camp. Okay, I think we won't go through everybody, but part of your homework will be describing your project. And so you'll want to try out these terms as you're describing them. So let's move on for now. Okay, so if your job is a grant writer, how do you go out and find the funders that share your mission? What are the best ways to do it? Well, two of the ways, there's something called a foundation data book. And there's one that's produced for most states, certainly for California. And it's actually a compilation of the 990 tax forms from all of the organizations that give out grants in California. So you can purchase one of those for a couple $100. And it's a valuable resource. Yeah, Candace.
Does Oregon have anything like that? I actually heard a couple more from Oregon.
Yes,
people.
They do.
Does Oregon have one of those?
Yep, they do.
Okay.
Most community libraries will have a copy of it, and I think it's a great research project to go to the library and do, barring COVID. The books are expensive and they get outdated pretty quickly. And the 990 doesn't have all of the information you're going to want to find out about that organization, like what their strategic priorities are. So after going to the foundation data book, the next step are the foundation websites. Now, some foundations still don't have websites, and that's okay. It probably means that they want you to communicate by phone or maybe even by letter. But would it surprise you to hear that these actually aren't the best way to find funders that share our mission? What do you think the best ways are? Yeah, Ernie?
I would say networking, talking with other nonprofits who have gotten grants that are similar to the one that you're looking for.
That's absolutely right. So other colleagues who are doing the same kind of work, they're in your sector. So and they've already been successful. So if they're successful at writing grants, they're going to be happy to share information about who they've found that success with. The other place to go are agencies that are already supporting the work that you do, or funders who are already supporting the work that you do. They've bought in to your culture and the types of projects you're doing, your mission. So they want you to be successful. So sitting down with somebody from a foundation and letting them know what you hope to do next and getting their ideas of who you might go to, I think is a real good use of your time. Okay? Now, I know that Siskiyou County is isolated and that California has a lot of grant programs that don't make it all the way up to your area. But the state of California has a wonderful tool. It's new. It's called the California Grants Portal. And it's like the foundation data book. It's just for state grants, and you can go in and type in key terms of what you're looking for. You can type in when the deadline is that you're looking for. And they will come up with a pretty comprehensive list of state grants that are available to you. So that's a tool that I suggest anybody that hasn't explored it yet, go in and play around with. Okay. So let's talk about a couple more things. We're quickly running out of time for my portion, and we've got a couple more concepts. So let's talk about other planning elements. The first one is creating a funding plan. So in that pre-planning work, what we have to do is get good at guessing. So I call guesstimate what your project, what you think it's going to cost. It may take several revisions or rounds of budgeting before you actually feel like your numbers are solid and competent and ready to submit to a grant. but it's helpful to have a guesstimate to get started with. Now, when we do that, we say, I think our project is going to cost $50,000. Almost nobody is going to get a grant for the whole $50,000, right? So you're going to have to think of other sources of revenue that you're going to use to match what you hope to get with that grant. So we need a way to kind of pencil out how much do we think we can ask for in a grant. And of course the answer is it really depends. But we can use some experience to have a couple of concepts that help us. If you have a project that we're going to call very fundable, you're working for a food bank and you need an extra freezer, then we might expect that the grant is going to pay for up to 80%. So we might be able to get 80% of the total project costs in grants. The other 1,000 is going to come from our own organization, either as cash or in kind. And maybe we have a partner that's going to put in either cash or in kind. So that would be a first start of our funding plan. Now, if you don't work for an organization that it's easy to get funding for, like a food bank, then you're going to have to take a different tact because you're not going to get 80% of your project. You may only expect to get 30% of your project funded by a single grant, right? That means you're going to have to go for more than one grant to get this freezer. And it may mean that the percentage of funding that you put in as the applicant needs to be higher, and that the contributions from your partners need to be higher. So we're all going to do this as we write grants. We'll get better and better at it, at knowing how much we need and match. Sometimes the funders will say directly. Other times we're going to have to take guesses. And so we're going to get practice at that when I give you your homework. Another thing that I do for all of the grants that I write is most grants are going to be online these days, and they're going to be attachments that you have to add to that grant in addition to the writing that you do to describe your project. So those attachments are things like the IRS determination letter that designated you as a nonprofit. They might ask for your 990 annual tax forms. They might ask for a board of directors list. They certainly will ask for your organizational budget and your project budget. They might ask for financial statements, which is the accounting for your organization, and there are other things. So what I do, because I write a lot of grants, I write between 5 and 10 grants a month, is I have all these documents ready to go. They're ready to go in a hard copy, and I have files that I've dropped them into so that I don't have to prepare these documents each time I write a grant. I do it, I update them all at least once a year, and they're ready to go. So the supporting document checklist is a great way to organize yourself to take care of that work ahead of time so that you're not wasting time trying to produce a board of directors list with a deadline that might be looming. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is permission to proceed. And this is now going back to who at your organization actually approves of the grant projects that you're going after. Abby, who at your organization gives approval for grant projects?
My board.
Okay. How about you, Ernie?
Be the board, yes.
Okay. Anybody that has staff approval for projects? That happens plenty of times. So it depends on how your organization decides those things. And what do they need from you in order to approve a project? Ernie, what do they ask you for?
Let's see, a general outline of what the purpose of it is and how much money we're going to be involved with.
Okay, that sounds great. But often, if you're not providing enough information, then people can make assumptions about what a project is and what it isn't. And they can be thinking something that's pretty different than what you're actually writing to. So unless you're going to show them the proposal before it goes in, I think it's really helpful to have as much detail about the scope of work in this permission to proceed document as we can get. So I'm actually sharing with you, Kathy sent it over, a project charter document. And every time you have a new idea for a project that you think you might want to go after grants for, I'm just saying that it starts with a project charter. And that's actually going to be your homework. We're going to pick one project that you want to work on and complete the project charter document for that project. So we're going to go through what the elements of the project charter is. I've given you a Word version of a blank project charter, and I've also given you a sample of a completed project charter to help you with your homework, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is say, what's going to happen during the project? What do you plan to do? And so you've got a chart here of, here's what we plan to do. We're going to get the board to approve the project charter. We're going to finalize the bench designs. We're going to purchase 8 benches. Then we also have, what's the measure of accomplishment? How do you know that got completed? And with the measure of accomplishment, we're going to give a timeline, right? So we got the charter approved in June. The bench design was finalized in July. They were purchased in July. So I'm going to have you try that out and create that for your project. So that's one element. The next element are other measures of success. In addition to purchasing those benches, what else is going to happen beyond the project activities? So things that you might answer in that section were, well, we got practice writing grants. We built new partnerships. We enrolled new clients. So things that are a benefit that you didn't just describe in your deliverables. I'm asking you what's not included, right? So this is a chance for you to better define your scope for clarity to somebody that might be reading it, okay? So no project funds will be spent on staffing. We're only going to do interior work. Only children of this age will be served. There's a project budget, and just like I showed a few minutes ago, it's going to ask you to guess on the revenues and expenses for the project and distinguish between in kind, which means something that's donated, goods or services, and what will be cash. And then think about when you expect to have all the funds ready, okay? So you'll do something just like this, a funding plan. The next part of the project charter is who's going to participate and what are they going to do, okay? Then after that, there's the interesting part called what could go wrong, right? If this project were to fail, what would have made it fail? And so some examples are, well, it's an event and maybe we didn't do the promotion early enough so nobody shows up, or it rains outside, or somebody breaks an arm and we didn't have liability coverage. So helping people see what are the things that you should have thought about that are important. All right. That's it. Now, this project charter document, I've been using for years. And who do you think loves the project charter documents? Any answers? Not the person writing them at first, because they're hard to write the first couple of times that you do them. But the people that love them are your board of directors, right? Because you're telling them in simple words, this isn't a fancy document, what's going to happen, who's going to be involved, and a way to engage your board in caring about that project happening. And you're actually going to ask the board at the bottom of the document to approve this project moving forward. So in that way, the grant writer loves it, because now I'm not responsible for being out ahead of the organization doing something they know nothing about, right? They're taking the responsibility for approving this, and that means I can move forward with it with confidence. The third group of people that love the project charters are funders. So once this charter is created and approved, it might have been 6 months ago, but this is evidence that your team has been working on this document for some while. And funders think they're just the niftiest thing ever. So when I get a chance to attach an extra document, I'll attach that signed project charter. Okay, so you've got the documents, the Word document, and your homework is going to be to maybe talk about this project charter tool that we want to introduce, draft the project charter, give it a stab. Like I said, the first time you do it, it's a little awkward, but spend a good hour, hour and a half on it, and then send it to me, and I'm going to review your document before next week, hopefully, right? So send me the document to my Gmail address. I'll get it back to you in a couple of days. And then when you're happy with the document, you can take it to the board or the people that will make the decision about approving the project and see what they think about it. What do you think? Now, to me, a really cool part of this is actually moving you way down the line in the planning stages, right? You're going to go back to that project charter document when you start writing your grants, and it's going to give you a lot of confidence going into the proposal. Yeah, we already thought about those things. Yeah, we already know who's going to be involved and what the timeline's going to be, right? So this isn't a grant that we're writing, it's a communication document to get permission to proceed. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my last slide because I'm at the end of my presentation. You guys have this presentation. You're welcome to use it and share it with whomever you like. You also have the 2 Word documents that you're going to be able to do your homework with. One caveat about the homework. We have a whole week until the next session. If you don't get to the project charter, all is not lost. Please still join us for session 2. And if you get done with your homework and you want me to review it, don't wait until Wednesday night to send it to me. Give me a couple of days to review your work so I can get it back to you. So, any questions about the homework?
I do have one.
Yeah.
We have several projects in the pipeline that we've been doing all this planning for. Can I use one of those for this?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
And when you get done with your project charter, and you start working on going after a grant for that one, I'm going to turn around and suggest you start another project charter.
Okay.
Because the more you can practice doing it this way, not thinking about the grants at first, but thinking about properly planning your project, you're going to really change the process of how your organization does grants. Let's think about what we want first, and let's ground it in our mission before we start looking for who gets to fund it.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions about homework? Yeah, Candace?
Yeah, are you available for emails for questions? Because honestly, you gave a ton of information, but I am really overwhelmed.
Yes.
So,
well, thanks for saying it, Candace. If you get stuck, absolutely send me an email. And don't feel like you have to fill out the whole project charter. If there are a couple of sections you can get to, then that takes an hour or so, send it to me. I'll review that and I'll help move you forward on some other parts. Okay? So we're going to take a good stab at trying to get through that. Any other questions? Because I just shared a lot of information, you may take a couple of days to recover from this, and then you'll go back to the project charter. And if you need a refresher on what I'm looking for, one, you'll have the completed project charter to use as a guide, but go ahead and email me and ask me whatever you'd like. Great. Okay, now we're right on track. It's 4:07, and I see that Levi from the Ford Family Foundation has joined us. We're going to get started at 4:15, and so you can either stay on and we can talk more about what the content was, or you can take a quick break. Just make sure that you're back for Levi's introduction at 4:15. So those of you that are on, what did you hear that was either new or that you said, aha, I need to do that?
Hi, Levi.
George, what did you hear that was different than what you've heard before?
I think what I heard was that skipping steps, again, I hear it again, skipping some of those steps can be costly for your time. Even though you spend a little time up front, pre-planning actually saves you time in the long run. I remember walking into a foundation with a really well done, thought out one-pager. I think that one-pager made the rest of that whole process up to completion of the project with that foundation so much easier because they knew we'd done our homework, and it just made everything easier. And so I think what you're leading us to with those thoughts is also a part of that is a one-pager that shows everything's been distilled. You know, the hard part is narrowing it down. So this is part of the process of really narrowing it down and nailing it down. So when you're ready to go to the funder, this is after pre-planning, I guess, but I feel like it's leading to that preparing that one-pager. So
yeah, and that pre-planning part of the project charter allows you to be messy. And you need to be, because we discuss ideas with the decision makers and let them tell you, yeah, we're not interested. Are a part of that. Go back and reform it. Bring it back, right?
I think everyone by nature wants to just get to the grant and skip this. And I think it's not a time saver, honestly, in the long run.
Say that again. I think that is such an important thing.
Meredith, we can hardly hear you.
Oh, really?
Can you touch us a little bit?
Yeah. Is this better?
It was okay all before. It was fine. It just all of a sudden it just had something,
Okay, good.
So I think, so what I said was that we all want to get right to the grant and get with it. But I think that the times going back and doing the pre-planning is actually it saves you time. It saves you a lot of time.
And it's not only time, but it's the mental space. When you go in with a project that you feel really good about, it's not stressful, and you really feel like you have something that you're proud to show fun, right? Mm-hmm. So that feeling keeps you writing grants and allows you to stay with the organization and keep doing the work, right?
I love the idea of reducing stress. I just haven't worked that out completely yet.
Well, I haven't either. But I have to keep trying, right? Great. Okay, Levi, can I make you the host?
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds good. Meredith, I was going to say too, when people are planning and getting ready for these, for to have these things presentable, if you're writing some of these things and you use some language that you use in your grants, I think it's helpful. I've seen organizations that will have part of these documents will have project description, they'll have the rationale, they'll have their anticipated results, and then when they go to approach funders, those sections are already done. And most funders are looking for those 3 sections anyway, so you can always those can transfer to different funders, and then the things that make you fit into those funders funding areas you can tweak, yep. But you have those big chunks already done.
Yeah, although I have to say I'm enough of a perfectionist that I usually rewrite them, because while the organization is the same, what you're writing for changes. And so you have to bring out that part of your organization.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But once you've written 25 descriptions of your organization, you are much better at it than when you first start.
Yeah, that is true too. Okay, well, I think we still have a couple minutes here, so I'll just wait a couple minutes. But I'm wondering if Kathy and Meredith, I think the way that this tends to work best on Zoom is as if one or two people wouldn't mind, I will ask everybody to, as I'm going through the presentation, instead of, usually it's nice to be able to stop and ask questions as we go, but this format doesn't work well for that. But if people are putting their questions in the chat, and there's 1 or 2 people that's looking at them and possibly could clump, you start to see questions that, they're asking the same questions, and clump them together. Yep. And then if one person would just ask me those questions once we're done with the presentation, that tends to work pretty good.
Okay,
does that sound
great.
Good?
Yep, I'm happy to do that.
Thanks.
Can I throw my own questions in?
Yeah, absolutely.
And thanks.
I always miss stuff. So.
We really appreciate you taking the time to help out.
Oh, you bet. I need to show off my COVID hair and my bedroom and.
Usually we're seeing you in far-flung areas.
Yes.
So it's nice to have a
Yeah, what do you think about all the travel?
I have a little more time, but all of my time has been eaten up by trying to figure out things with distance learning with my kids. And, you know, so I have 3 little ones, 12, 10, and 8. And so my wife works full time. And so I'm working from home, but I'm also got a kid who's doing distance learning from home. And so I'm been busier than ever. And so all that travel time and those things have been eaten up with new COVID reality items.
Okay, so I think folks are coming back, and Levi, I'll let you introduce yourself, and thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Well, hello everyone. Let me see if I can't share my screen here, and I've got a PowerPoint. Okay, let's see here. Here we go. Can everyone see this?
Yep.
Right. Well, hello everyone. Thanks for letting me come and share. My name's Levi Williams. I'm an Associate Program Officer in our Children, Youth, and Families Department at the Ford Family Foundation. And it's always been my favorite thing about working at the foundation is always getting out and being with folks and seeing everybody who's doing the work on the ground and just such vital members of our community. And I would say the hardest thing about this pandemic has been being at home, not seeing my coworkers as much, and definitely not being out in the community and seeing all the great people that do such good work. But I'm glad we can have a little bit of time together in this format and be able to talk about what the Ford Family Foundation does and see if there's any alignment with your organization and your programs. But I think how we're gonna do this, the easiest way that we have found to do this in a Zoom format is, as I'm going through, if you wouldn't mind maybe just throwing any questions you have in the chat, if you're comfortable with that. And then Kathy and Meredith are gonna be kind of tallying those as I go through the presentation. And then at the end, there is gonna be time to answer any questions. If you're not comfortable with that, you know, maybe if you can just hold on to your questions towards the end, we'll definitely have a time that more than willing to answer any questions you might have. All right. So the Ford Family Foundation, who are we? Well, we're a private nonprofit foundation that's based in Roseburg, Oregon. We do have our scholarship office in Eugene. And we are a foundation that serves rural communities throughout Oregon and Siskiyou County, California. And I believe that the Ford Family Foundation is one of less than 2% of foundations that really have a focus on rural communities. And the reason that we have a focus on rural communities is because our founders, Kenneth and Hallie Ford, wanted to make sure that they were giving back to the communities that helped generate their wealth. Kenneth and Hallie Ford started Roseburg Forest Products in the 30s, and that grew into one of the largest privately owned foundations in the world. And Kenneth and Hallie were always philanthropic minded, and they gave through Roseburg Forest Products for years. And there's great stories of them in the community. I know Kenneth would show up at schools in the fall and say, you know, who needs shoes, who needs coats, you know, and he would make sure that every kid that needed a pair of shoes got a pair of shoes, every kid that needed a coat got a coat, those types of things. I've heard stories of Kenneth stopping. He'd see some building going up somewhere, he'd stop, ask a few questions, and the next day an entire load of wood would show up from Roseburg Forest Products. Just great stories like that. I'm very involved in the communities that they were part of. Our mission at the Ford Family Foundation is successful citizens in vital rural communities, and it's really how the foundation is broken up. On the successful citizens side, this is really how we look at how we invest in people to improve life outcomes, you know, for children in rural Oregon and Siskiyou County, California. And there's 2 departments there. One is our Children, Youth, and Families Department. That's the department that I am a part of. And it's the department that we do primarily the largest bulk of this type of open granting. And then the other department under Successful Citizens is our post-secondary success department. This is our scholarship program. And at any given time, there is 500 plus Ford Scholars across a multitude of programs. Really, there's the traditional students who are graduating high school, going into a 4-year program. We have a transfer program for students who are coming out of a community college and then looking to go and finish up a 4-year program. There's a restart program for maybe somebody who has started school at one point, but life happens or whatever, and didn't finish that degree, but now is looking to go back and pick that degree back up or start a new degree. And then we have a single parent program for those that are raising kids as a single parent. And it's a pretty robust scholarship. It's 90% of all unmet need. So it's a pretty substantial scholarship. And it's definitely kind of the one of the main things that we do. On the Vital Rural Communities side, this is how we kind of invest in places to improve the conditions of rural communities so that they have a strong economic, social, and civic foundation. On this side, we have our Ford Institute for Community Builders. And I think a lot of people know about the Institute. They are heavily involved with our communities to really help move community led action along. They're really not to come in and cast a vision. They come in and they help move a vision that's already been casted by the community to the next step. They've done that through leadership programs. Now they're really doing it with bringing groups together and helping them bring those visions along. And then our newest department is also under our Vital Rural Communities, and that's our Community Economic Department. And our Community Economic Department really focuses on keeping wealth local in rural communities. So, really promoting more of the locally owned businesses, ways to keep, wealth within those communities, those types of things. So when I talk about our open grants, really there are 4 different types of open grants that we make. We make grants that are, like I said, through our Children, Youth, and Families. That is programmatic. We support programs. We support general operating for those organizations that really align well within the Children, Youth, and Families department. And we do capital as well. In the Children, Youth, and Families department, it's really all focused around youth, and it's 4 main program areas. There are access to health for pregnant moms and kids, 0 to 18. There's early childhood education and child care. There is youth development. And when I say youth development, think like youth development outside of your typical K-12 system. These are grants for organizations that are, they do like a lot of out of school time stuff, a lot of summer stuff. Boys and Girls Clubs fit well into this, YMCAs fit well into this, but also your little, your little church group that's doing an after school program too. We have supported those as well. And then there is in our Children, Youth, there's also our child abuse prevention and intervention. So any organization that's working to prevent child abuse or to intervene there, we work with a lot of organizations like child advocacy centers, CASAs, that type of thing is really a good fit for those types of grants. And then in our Community Economic Department, we actually have our community building spaces. These are strictly capital grants. that are for community spaces that the broader community uses. So these are things like libraries, community centers, fire halls can fall into those types of grants. But really, to be eligible for those grants is really about that broader community having access to that space. And then we have two smaller grants, our technical assistance and our good neighbor, but I'm going to go into depth a little more on those in just a minute. So what does it look like to be ready for a grant, be eligible and ready? Well, there's several things. There's a sound design, a compelling need, a clear timeline, and a budget. And I think that speaks really well to what Meredith was talking about when I jumped on, having all of that work done before approaching a funder it's big. I do talk to a lot of people seeking funding, and they're still at the beginning stages, and I love talking to people, and I'm more than willing, but it's really that need to go back and have all of this ready. How are like, what's your plan to make this happen, to get to full funding, whatever it might be. The foundation we're not a great foundation for first dollars in, but we're not necessarily last dollars either. So 50% of your budget needs to be raised or committed. That doesn't mean dollars in hand, but you've got those commitments before applying to the Ford Family Foundation. And that really speaks to our last bullet here, which I'll hit in just a second. And then typical grant, is anywhere between $2,000 and $250,000, but no request can be more than 1/3 of any given budget. Now we've given less than $2,000. We've made grants of more than $250,000. So that's just kind of the typical range. For our programmatic grants within children, youth, and family, we do multiple year grants, up to 3 year. I will say this year's with the pandemic and not knowing what markets we're going to do and things like that, our board did pull back from that a little bit. We are still doing multi-year requests, but they are now contingent upon resources being available in future years. So right now it seems like those resources are going to be there, but just keep that in mind for multiple year requests. And then the last one, here it says capital, but it's really across all of our programs as well. There needs to be community support as demonstrated by local or regional cash or in-kind contributions. And this tends to be the highest bar for organizations to clear. And our board is looking for those local or regional dollars for 3 reasons. One, they know that if an organization has engaged the community in this way, they know about the project or the program. 2, they're willing to support the project and program. They want it there. And 3, they're willing to help sustain any project or program once foundation dollars run out. We don't want to set up any organization to fail just after a few years when foundation dollars run out. So that really speaks to the sustainability. Now, one caveat to this, again, is that these local, regional cash and in-kind contributions look way different than they did 8 months ago. And our board understands that. So really, I just urge organizations, this isn't about, a percentage of your budget that is contributing from local or regional cash. This really is a story of engagement. And we're seeing organizations engage in different ways now. They're still, or some organizations are still putting on fundraisers, but in a virtual format, finding creative ways to still engage that community and seek those local or regional contributions. And just know that our board does understand that it looks so much different now than it did 8 months ago. All right, and then, like I said earlier, we do have 2 grant programs that are smaller grants, much easier to apply for, much more streamlined. One, and I think everybody that that is eligible for a technical assistance grant should apply for a technical assistance grant. These are smaller grants up to $5,000 to build your internal capacity. So these are great for things like hiring an outside consultant to come in and do some strategic planning with your board, set up fiscal systems, send staff to a training, or build skills that builds that internal capacity. And with these grants, it really is important to think about that internal capacity. Sometimes we get requests to have somebody come in and design the website. It's not a real great fit for technical assistance unless the website is doing something that truly builds capacity for the organization. Really, these are great grants to really do that planning to build that capacity. And then our Good Neighbor grants is our other small grants, real simple to apply for as well. These are short-term grants for simple projects or unforeseen emergencies. They're up to $10,000, but these are highly competitive grants because there is a limited amount of money that is set aside each year for Good Neighbor grants. And this grant really does work best to be last dollars in. And they don't cover 100% of a project unless it's a smaller component of a larger process. And some good examples of Good Neighbor grants would be, like, let's say you have a community center that its HVAC system goes down in the middle of winter. The organization has some dollars set aside for maintenance and things like that, but it just, not a need like this. This is an unexpected emergency. That would be a competitive Good Neighbor request to help, get an organization over the top for that. Or let's say that your community came together and they built a playground, but funds kind of, costs ran over and funds kind of ran out towards the end, and you just need that bark mulch or that medium for the playground. That's a great example of what a competitive Good Neighbor request would look like as well. So our process for grants, there really is no deadline. Really our website is key. You submit through our online portal. Once we do receive an application, it is reviewed by staff, and then if approved, it's either approved at that point, depending on the size and the nature of the request, or it's approved for due diligence and board review. If it is approved for due diligence, there's usually a site visit that's required. These days, that's all through Zoom. But hopefully, I'm hoping that there will be a day not too far into the future that I will be able to get out and do in-person site visits again and see all the great projects and programs that are going on. And then you can usually expect a response within 6 to 8 weeks after submitting an application. And you'll either hear, an approval, a decline, or what next steps might look like. And then, dollars out the door actually just kind of depends on the size of the project, the grant amount, and then kind of what time of year it comes in. If it's a large grant request, it needs to go before our board, just depending on when it comes in, it might have to go to a board meeting, and that can take a little bit of time. But basically, you can expect 6 to 8 weeks for an initial response, and then depending on the size of the request, it's usually 3 to 6 months before funding would be released, depending on the project. And then one more thing while I'm here, just to highlight, starting yesterday, we are dark. Our online portal is dark for 3 weeks. We are switching our grants management system, and we're super excited about this. We've been with the same system for over 20 years, and it's just really, over the years, has not been keeping up with what other systems are now doing out there. And so we're in a transitional period here. So just keep that in mind, that you can't apply for a grant for, most likely, we're hoping to be back online the 21st, so 3 weeks here. But once we're hoping that that's going to be a much more pleasant experience for our grantees and for staff. So we're really excited for that. The last thing that I just want to touch on too, one of the programs that the foundation does is our select books. These are just books just for the asking. They are free for every resident in Oregon and Siskiyou County, California. And you can just get on our website, click on our select books and request a book. It's mailed straight to your home. Once you're finished with that book, you are asked to do a small review of that book, and you can get in and select another book. This is a great resource as well, because we have books that span across what the entire foundation is doing. In fact, there's books here on like strategic planning, working with boards, those types of things. I've seen entire boards get on to select books, select the book, they'll go through the book together, and it's a free way to do a little bit of strategic planning or board engagement, those types of things. These books, some of these books are translated into Spanish, and there are some of the selections are also available in audio as well. So I really encourage people to take advantage of those. And like I said before, our website is key. So you can find all this information on the website, and then you can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter these days. So coming into the modern age. All right, well, that's it for my PowerPoint. Let me go ahead and stop sharing here so I can see everybody. And I see that there are some questions, and I wonder if maybe Meredith or Kathy can help me out here, and we'll just jump in and start answering some of those.
Okay, so the first question is, how many folks receive scholarships from the foundation in Siskiyou County each year?
It varies. I don't know the exact number. There's not like a certain amount that is set aside. But I know Siskiyou County is what the Ford Family Foundation considers one of their core counties, because there is a mill there in Weed. And so it was Kenneth's vision, and it's still the vision of our board that those scholarships are equitable for kiddos in rural communities. So Douglas County, Coos County, and Siskiyou kind of hold a special place in the foundation's heart. But I'm sorry, I don't have exact numbers on that.
Great. Are you funding either COVID recovery or wildfire recovery projects?
Yes. So we are. With COVID, there was an initial. There was an initial. I believe it was. Yeah, there was an initial $1 million that we funded organizations that were already granting with us, and so we sent out $1 million to different organizations to respond, and then that was very broad. It could be around things that we usually don't do. And I should say there are 3 main areas that the foundation doesn't fund around, and that's food, transportation, and housing. But during COVID, especially with food, we knew that was a huge issue. So there was some flexibility there to be able to use that. As for COVID recovery, our board hasn't directed us in any guidelines yet on what that's going to look like. There was the initial emergency response, and then there have been kind of a wait and see what needs are going to pop up. Oddly enough, we have seen with a lot of organizations that the PPE, the payroll protection, has got them through 2020 for many of those organizations. So we understand that the real impact is probably going to be 2021 and beyond, and there's going to be years of recovery there. And we're definitely, our board, the foundation is committed to the rural communities that we work in, and I have full confidence that they're going to do their best to help those communities recover. As far as the fires go, kind of the same thing. So initially there was $250,000 that was given right away to organizations like United Ways, Red Crosses, those types of things to support the emergency needs of first responders and people in those communities. I believe we gave 25,000 to, oh man, I'm gonna butcher this because they just changed their name, but it's the foundation there for the northern state.
Community Foundation of the North State.
Exactly. I should have had that ready to go. So we gave an initial 25,000 there for just that initial emergency response. They also partnered with the Oregon Community Foundation and Meyer Memorial Trust to create a pooled fund at the Oregon Community Foundation. The Ford Family Foundation gave $1 million to that fund, as did Oregon Community Foundation and Meyer. And now it is open to businesses. Nike's already come in and given money. It's above $5 million now. That fund is really targeted for long-term recovery in our communities. So we're thinking, 4 to 5 years, or 4 months to 5 years, kind of that area. And so that's going to be available. And then our board also just allocated another $1 million for response from the foundation itself. It's not through the Oregon Community Foundation. And our staff and our board is kind of trying to figure out guidelines and what that's going to look like moving forward. But yes, absolutely have been super involved in both the COVID and the fire response.
Great. Okay. Another question. What percentage of all projects are approved?
You know what? It's I would say it's quite high. And so we're kind of a unique foundation in that sense, is that we're really not looking to weed out any organization. So we can't go against what our board of directors has directed us to do, but I will say that we, as a staff, we have a motto that we're really trying to get to yes. So if you fit within one of our funding areas and you meet readiness and guidelines, we're trying to get to a yes. So I would say it's in the high 90s for those. If you fit those two, if you fit into one of our funding buckets and you're eligible and your readiness is right, we fund almost 100% of those projects. Now, with that said, our board does, they have the discretion to decline, and they have done that in the past. So it's not 100%, but it's close to 100%.
Wow. So is that encouraging or what? What about, could you just describe the parameters around outside projects?
Can you give me an example?
The outside capital projects like pools or trails?
Yes. So pools, we do support like community pools and things like that. I believe on that specific program, this is through our Community Economic Development Department, so I could be off a little bit here, but I believe that's the $25,000 max there. For things like trails and things like that, it really just depends if the trail is providing, like if it's got a strong community use, there might be potential for the community building spaces for that to be a part of that. As far as like the children, youth, and families, like if it's a trail that is used as youth development in some way, there's potential there too to support that. That's really just like a trail or something like that would be a case by case, talk through it, see if there is some alignment and that type of thing.
Great. That's all the questions we had in the chat. So I guess this is an opportunity for anybody that's holding back on their questions to ask.
I must have.
Levi, I heard you say that you're really trying to get to yes, and that you might not get a no, you might get something else. How is that communicated, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so as an organization that's trying to get to yes, like my job is really primarily around these open grants. And so it's my job to reach back out. Like if an application comes in and it's not, you know, we have a question or funding seems a little off, or maybe, you know, I will reach out and ask a few questions and see if we can't, you know, get to that yes, especially for, like I said, you know, when we see a organization that comes in and they're like, you know, my director, she always talks about a bullseye, like, and they're in that bullseye, like they are doing everything that our board wants us to be investing in. You know, those are the organizations that it's like, okay, you know, we really are trying to get to a yes. Or if it's a program, you might be one circle out, but it's still, this is, you know, this fits so well within what we want to fund. You know, let's see if we can get there.
Great. So it's really a conversation about what you saw and what was missing, and helping them develop that plan to get them the rest of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a relationship, and I think one thing that you know, I've been at the foundation for about 2.5 years now, and one thing that I've seen is that we are a relationship-based organization. We care about these communities, and we're going to work with these communities. Very rarely do we just ever send out just a decline. You know, we do get requests that are so far outside. You know, we got a request from Colorado. It's like, we don't even fund in Colorado. So, you know, something like that would just get a decline. But, you know, very rarely do we just send out straight declines.
Great. And then one last question on the technical assistance grants. You talked about consultants. How does somebody go about finding a consultant?
Ooh, that's a good question, and I have a better answer for those that live in Oregon than I do in Siskiyou County, California. In Oregon, we have what we call the Oregon Nonprofit Association, and on their website, they actually have a directory for that. I'm actually going to make a note because that's such a good question for residents of Siskiyou County. But I wonder if there's not some similar resource, some nonprofit organization.
They have been happy to work with us, the nonprofit, the Oregon nonprofit.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, and we have such a close relationship with them, that doesn't surprise me at all. So it might be worth, if you are looking for a consultant, getting the Oregon Nonprofit Association. You can get directly on their website. They have what they call a directory, and then there's a menu. So if you're looking for strategic planning, you'll hit that, and it'll bring up available consultants and that type of thing. And that's a good question, Meredith, too, because on the technical assistance grants, you will see that we do ask that you identify the training or the consultant or the work, and that there is a scope of work that's provided. That's the one attachment with those grants that we ask for.
But that also includes trainings, right? You can apply for funding to go to a training.
Absolutely.
The technical assistance program. And is there a match requirement on the technical assistance programs?
There is not. There's no match required. Like I said, we only ask that there's one attachment that we ask for. So like if you're sending a staff to training, you know, like a PDF of the agenda or something like that, suffices for that. There is no match. And the other great thing about technical assistance grants is they can run congruent with more of our traditional grants. So you could be receiving a grant for youth development or have a capital project that you receive funding for, and you can still come in and request those technical assistance grants.
And did I hear you say that you're encouraging every organization that has mission match to apply for a technical assistance grant?
Yeah, like I said, we're trying to get to yes, and we know that there's so many organizations that are doing such great work, and our president, and she definitely feels that building up capacity with organizations is one of the best ways a foundation can support communities. You know, the higher capacity organizations become, the better they can serve their communities.
Question. If you are applying for, you know, a third of a budget of a capital grant and you get the okay from you guys, how long a time period do you have, you know, at the same time you're trying to get the other money to line it all up to do it? What's your timeline?
So with capital grants in particular, it's pretty typical that funding would not be released until you reach full funding. So if you're 50% raised and you come in and you are approved for a capital grant and it covers the, you know, another third, you still, you know, might be 20% away from reaching full funding. So there's a grant agreement that goes out, it's committed, it just would not be released until full funding is achieved. It's a little different with programs. Programs, you know, if you're approved for a grant, it's usually paid out next month for year one.
Is there like a year window there from when you get approved to when you finally meet your thing, or what?
No, I think typically they're put as years, but then they just are extended until you reach full funding. In fact, we have a capital grant that was approved, I believe 12 years ago, and they still haven't reached full funding, but they're still approved.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say that this is probably the best Zoom presentation I've given. At first, I did not know how to do this. I depend so much on audience feedback that I felt like I stammered my way through that first one, and I feel like this one was so much better. So I must be getting better at this with not having as many questions. So anything else, Meredith?
No, the information is great. And while you're there on the line, I would like to share how much we appreciate your funding for this grant writing class. For this one and over the years. You guys are wonderful to work with, and we love helping others meet you so they can see how relational you really are and how encouraging you are of them going after Ford Family Foundation funding.
Absolutely, that's why we're here. And like I said at the beginning, it's you know, seeing all the people in the communities doing the great work is the best part of what I do. So
fabulous. Thanks, Levi. And thank you, everybody, for hanging in there. We will be back next Thursday. Kathy's going to send out a second Zoom link. We are recording the sessions, and so if you want to watch another part of it, you can. And good luck working on your project charters, and I'm excited about reading about the work that you're going to be doing. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, thank you.
All right, Meredith and Kathy, I'm going to go ahead and jump off. I got to go pick up my son, so this is good timing.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Great job, Levi.
All right.
Really nice pace and just the right amount of information.
Oh, thank you. I really did feel like that one was way smoother than some I've had in the past. So
nice.
It takes a while to get everything together,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, and feel comfortable doing it. Yeah.
So
Joe, what do you think?
Levi, do you think I could get a copy of your PowerPoint?
Yeah, absolutely. I will.
In our files, so if somebody had a question, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, and I'll send along a format that you can also share with people that ask for it.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thanks again.
Bye.
Meredith, I thought that was just incredible. I really thought it was well done. And when you made the comment on pace, I think that's the neatest thing about it. You paced so perfect that you could follow everything you were saying. And, you know, it had to be hard because you had some of the people that were very much beginning in the grant writing process. And then you have other people that like work for a hospital and have had completely different experiences. And I thought you just was perfect for everybody.
Well, you know, Candace was the one who said I'm overwhelmed, and it was a lot of information. And it is hard to balance the folks that have a lot of experience. And actually in this class, through the intake, there were a third of the people that said they had a lot of experience. And you could kind of hear that in their answers. But the nice thing is, especially as a network of people, the folks with a lot of experience will still pick up things, and they will participate more in the responses, which actually makes them feel good about their participation too.
I think adult learners just love to talk about what they know.
Yeah.
And whenever they give those answers, I think it's so good for the people then that don't have a lot of experience, because now, you know, it's kind of a community and we're all working together to get where we need to go.
Yeah, now what I really like is the activity time when they get to work in small groups and talk to each other. And the folks with more experience really add a lot to that. And that won't happen this time, but
so Joe, we normally have 40 to 50 people in a class.
And the sessions go for 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot more hands-on work, and that works too. I mean, this is a long time for people to sit and take in information, but when they go back and they do their homework, that'll allow them to process a lot of this.
Yeah.
And what's neat is this time we were set up about tell us what you're going to do. The second session is all about the needs statement and what's the unacceptable problem that you're trying to solve. So it's really very different, and it gives a context to the project as rescuing the problem. So the writing part and getting them to talk about the challenges is new, and since they're so focused on what they're doing now, it's really a nice switch.
Yeah.
We'll see that next time. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being willing to join to see what it's about. It is a lot of making people feel comfortable with a difficult thing, right? But when you heard Levi talk and say, yeah, we'd like to give a grant to everyone in the room, they really mean it, the technical assistance grants. So it makes it approachable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And Joe wanted to kind of get to know, you know, really more detail on our programming now that he's on the board and all of that. So this is really fantastic that you've been able to sit in, Joe. Too.
Yeah. Well, I just love sitting in, and I think this one is just a huge need, because there's a lot of people out there with money and they're ready to help, but people don't have their projects planned, and then they're having those growing pains because they see there's some money available, and then what if they accidentally get it and they haven't got a plan together, haven't got anybody to approve it, or so this is we're right at the perfect time right now, I think, for this.
Yeah. Yep. Great. Okay. Well, thanks so much. And I was happy with how it went. I finally got my slides progressing. The amount of content was right on. I rushed a little bit at the end, but I got through everything. And we'll spend a good amount of the time at the beginning talking about their experience during the week and what it was like doing that writing piece.
And Meredith, would you like me to pick up some gift cards? I can always mail them out.
Do we have their address?
Oh yeah, I have their address.
I love that.
I know that works so well with you.
Can we do like a $10 cards?
$10 cards, how many?
Well, we'll only have 3 sessions, and we can give out less in the future. I'd say let's do 15. Let's give out 5 $10 cards.
5. Oh, so $50. Or we can do more if you want.
Well, if we do 15 $10 cards, that'll be $150.
Yeah, okay, got it.
And we'll make them feel like $1 million.
And Starbucks, do you think? Or
wait,
I better check some of these communities and see what they, I'll look in the community.
Dutch Brothers is down in Southern Oregon quite a bit. But I wonder if they're in Siskiyou County.
These are all small communities that they're all, so I want to just.
If you check, Starbucks would immediately be a yes.
Yeah.
But see if Dutch Brothers, how many Dutch Brothers there are.
Okay.
Because there are more Dutch Brothers than Starbucks in Southern Oregon.
Okay.
And Dutch Brothers does a lot for disaster recovery.
Dutch Brothers is okay.
Yeah. Levi did a great job with the questions.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he always does, and he's so good about being
Great.
there. Well, and can you tell me what you want me to send out as homework, Meredith? So I put the supporting document checklist on my list.
I don't think they've got their homework. That's the two project charters. What I did was I actually added the files into my PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we don't have to send out any of the additional files.
Okay.
There's the supporting document checklist, but I don't know that they actually need it.
I could send it with a Zoom link for next week.
Okay, great.
That might just be, a supplemental thing, because that is a nice worksheet that you have on that.
Yep. Now, do they all have and could you just make sure that you share my email again so that they know where to send the homework?
Okay.
Great. Well, thanks, Joe.
Okay. And I'll see you tomorrow, Joe.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.